Hello dear plus one student, welcome to this online platform. We are going to have the explanation of the first chapter of your Hornbill book, that is The Portrait of a Lady by Khushwant Singh. The Portrait of a Lady. Portrait means photograph. Photograph of a lady. So today I will summarize this chapter and I will discuss all the aspects mentioned in the chapter. This chapter is the story about a grandmother and the grandson. When grandson was living with her grandmother in the village, at that time her parents they went to live in the city. They were shifted in the city and they left the narrator to live with the grandmother in the village. So every day the grandmother used to wake up him early in the morning. She used to dress him and she used to make him ready for the school. The grandmother, she was a very pious lady. She was a very pious. Pious means what? Religious. She was a very religious lady. Her lips were constantly moving in the prayer of God. Most of the time she used to be engaged in the prayer of God as she was very religious lady. She was very old. It is discussed in the beginning paragraph that my grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, was an old woman. She had been old and wrinkled for the 20 years that I had known her. So the narrator is saying that grandmother was a very old lady. She was very old and like everybody grandmother, how it is very common for the grandmother that they are old. So like everybody grandmother, the narrator grandmother was also very old and she had been at the same age, she had been old from last 20 years. She had been old and wrinkled. Wrinkled means when the people are getting old, there are several crisscross over their skin. It means that they are wrinkled skin they are having with the passing of the age. So the same was there with the grandmother. The narrator, since his childhood, he had been seeing his grandmother at the same age, at the same situation. She was very old. So the grandmother was there in the village and the narrator was living with the grandmother. So grandmother, who was a very pious and religious lady, most of the time she used to be busy in the prayer of God. Every morning she used to make the narrator ready for the school. She was dressing him and she was making him ready for the school, and grandmother and the grandson both were going to the school together because the school was adjoining. Adjoining means it was combined. It was adjoining with the temple. The grandmother was joining the temple and the narrator was joining the school, where the narrator was learning the alphabets and all other things, and the grandmother, she used to spend her time in reading the scriptures. A scripture is what? Holy books. The holy books. And grandmother, as she was a religious and pious lady, she was spending her time in the temple and the narrator was spending his time in the school. Temple and school both were combined, both were adjoining. And when the school was over, the grandmother was returning back with the narrator. So this schedule was going on there in the village when the narrator was very small and he was left in the village by his parents to live with the grandmother. Every morning the grandmother used to give him one chapati by pouring some butter and sugar on it. By pouring some butter and sugar on it. It was his breakfast. And the grandmother, she used to carry several stale chapatis. The stale means the chapati that she cooked last night. This was the stale chapati, and she was keeping several stale chapatis with her to feed the street dogs. To feed the street dogs, the dogs that used to meet them when they were going to the school. So she was just feeding those dogs, and the grandmother was there, and this was the custom. Every day she was making him ready for the school, giving him the same breakfast, and she was carrying the several stale chapatis with her, feeding the street dogs, and the grandmother was joining the temple and the narrator was joining the school, and after that when the school was over they were returning back to their home. This schedule was going on there. The narrator, he was very happy with his grandmother and he loved her. The grandmother used to sing her prayer most of the time, and while she was dressing him for the school, at that time she was singing the prayer and she was expecting that the narrator should also learn that prayer. That's why while doing any work or while dressing him for the school, she was singing that prayer. she was hoping that the narrator would also learn that prayer by listening it. But the narrator, he did not concern, he did not annoyed to learn it, he did not bother about learning, but he was listening it very carefully. Why? Because he loved her voice. She was singing that prayer in a very melodious tone, so he liked her voice and he was listening it very carefully. So everything was going on as per the schedule. And when the narrator's parents were completely settled in the city, then they called them there. The narrator and the grandmother, they were now shifted to the city. This is the second phase of the story. In the first phase, they had spent their life in the village. The grandmother, who was living in the village, and the narrator, he started his early schooling days in the village, where everything was going on as per the village rule, as per the rituals, as per the custom. The grandmother was there taking care of him. But when in the second phase, the parents were completely settled in the city, then they called them. To come and live in the city. When the grandmother and the grandson, they both were shifted into the city, then now the narrator was admitted into an English medium school. It was the city school, and he started going to the school by the school bus. See the change in their relationship, the changing phase in their relationship. In the village, the grandmother used to accompany him to the school, where the temple and schools were adjoining, and they were returning back to the home together. But when the grandmother and the grandson both were called in the city and they were shifted in the city, so now the narrator started going to an English medium school by the school bus. So the grandmother could not accompany him, and after that, whenever he was returning back from the school, the grandmother used to ask him what the teacher had taught in the school. As it is often happening when the kids are returning back from the school, the parents are asking about their homework, they are asking that what the teacher had taught in the school. In the same way, the grandmother earlier, she used to take care of all those things, even the homework and all the things she used to take care when he was living with her in the village. The same was there when he used to return from the school. Then the grandmother used to ask him what the teacher had taught in the school, and the narrator used to tell her, वो उसको बताया करता था that the teacher had taught, he was given some lesson about science, music, geography and all those things. The grandmother did not like it, because she did not like the teaching of the English medium school. She was very concerned that there were no teaching about the God, there were no teaching about the scripture. The grandmother was a pious and religious lady, and she was expecting that in school also there should be a syllabus, there should be a teaching about the God, about the moral values, about all the good things. But when the narrator told her that there are no teaching about the God, there are teaching about the science, there are teaching about the geography, there are teaching about the music. So, but she was concerned that there are no teaching about God and scripture, so she did not like it. And when he told her that he had been given some lesson about the music, the grandmother, she got angry, because she did not like music, and she was thinking that the music is for the beggars, the music is for not the gentleman. She was thinking that music is not for the good people, so she did not like it. See, two phases are there. The grandmother, she was of some different age, and the narrator, he was of some different age. So the generation gap is there. The two different generations are there, where the narrator, he was as per the present generation, he started going to the English medium school, where the things about where the English teaching was there. There was teaching about the science, geography, and there was teaching about the music, but there were no teaching about the God. But the grandmother, who was of different age, she was expecting that the school teaching should not be based like this. Music should not be music lesson should not be given to the student. She was thinking that music is not for the good fellow, music is not for the gentleman, it is for the beggars, it is for the homeless wanderer, it is for the vagabonds, it is not for the good fellows. And after that, the narrator who was there, he started attending the English medium school. Now the grandmother could not help him in his homework even, so she stopped asking, and she started living separately. She stopped asking. After that, now here from this place, the gap between their relationship that started. The narrator, he started attending, and the grandmother, that she used to spend her time in the village in the prayer of God, in feeding the dogs and in the prayer of the God. So when she was shifted in the city, now there were no dogs in the street, and whom she should feed and what she should do. Earlier she was accompanying the narrator to the school where she was spending her time in the temple, but when she was shifted in the city, she could not spend her time, she could not go outside, there were no temple in the neighborhood, and that kind of system was not there in the city. So she started spending her time by spinning the wheels, over the spinning wheels. Spinning wheels क्या होता है? चरखा ऐसे चलाते हैं, उससे वो कार्टन डालते हैं, उससे थ्रेड बनता है. She started spending her time by running the spinning wheel, and in the afternoon she used to spend half an hour in feeding the sparrows. She used to sit there in the courtyard of the house, and hundred of sparrows used to gather there. Sparrows, the birds, used to gather there. She was taking some chapatis and she was breaking them into pieces, and she was feeding the sparrows. Earlier in the village she was feeding the dog, but in the city, in the afternoon time, she started feeding the sparrows, the birds, and by this way she started spending her time. When the narrator had completed his schooling, and after that he had to go abroad for his further education. After completing his schooling, now he had to go abroad for his further education. So at that time, the narrator, when he went to the, after that, the narrator, he went to the university. After completing his schooling, he went to the university, and now he started living there in the hostel. So now the more gap was there between their relationship. Now more gap started. The grandmother started living there alone without the grandson, and she started spending her time over the spinning wheels, over the feeding of sparrows, and in the prayer of the God. Her lips were constantly moving in the prayer of the God. Most of the time she was spending in the prayer of God, and her fingers were always moving over the beds of rosary. माला, जो माला ऐसे नहीं फेरते हैं, उसको बोलते हैं इंग्लिश में बेड्स ऑफ रोजरी. हर फिंगर्स वर ऑलवेज मूविंग ओवर द बेड्स ऑफ रोजरी, एंड हर लिप्स वर continuously moving in the prayer of God. So when the narrator was shifted there in the hostel and started attending the classes in the university, so the separation started between them. Now even the separation started at that time when they shifted in the city, and they both were not sharing the same room. They both were not staying together. The narrator started living in another room, and the grandmother was living in another room in the city even. So there the gap started, and after that, when she could not accompany him to the school, then there also the gap started increasing more. And finally, when the narrator went to the university, he started living there in the hostel, then the gap became more and more. And after completing his university education, when the narrator had to go abroad for his further education, then grandmother, she come to bid him. Bid him means to say goodbye at the station. And even there was no any such expression over her face, like she was very sad, or she was very concerned about it. And finally, because she did not want to make him sad, finally the narrator went abroad for his education, and after completing his education, when he returned back, it was a great news for the grandmother. She started doing all the arrangement to welcome him. And when he returned back to his home, the grandmother had taken one drum, and she gathered some women from the neighborhood, started beating the drum, and started singing the song of the homecoming of warriors, welcome song of the homecoming of warriors. And this was a welcome song. She was greeting him, she was welcoming him on his arrival at the home after a long time. And the grandmother, even the narrator parents, they asked her not to sing or not to work hard, because she was not well, and even she was very old. But on that day she did not listen anybody. She was overwhelmed. She was very happy on the arrival of his grandson. and finally on the same evening she got sick. She got sick and she started suffering from that pain, and she thought that her death was very near. She started waiting for her approaching death. Even at that time she did not spend her time in talking to anybody. She did not waste her time in talking to anybody. Her lips were moving in the prayer, her fingers were moving over the beds of rosary, and finally she died. Finally she died. When her dead body was carried outside of the room and it was kept in the courtyard, hundred of sparrows whom she used to feed every day in the afternoon, they gathered around the dead body of grandmother. The narrator's mother, she went to the kitchen and brought some chapatis. She had broken them into pieces as the grandmother used to do, and given to the sparrows. But the sparrows did not touch a bit of it. They were also expressing their mourn. They were also expressing their sadness on the death of the grandmother. So, and without touching that any bit of that chapati, they flew away silently. So, this way, this shows the character of the grandmother, who was very pious and religious lady, and the relationship between grandmother and the grandson, and the separation because of generation gap and because of the situation, that one phase when they were living in the village, another phase when they were shifted in the city, and the next phase when the narrator went to the university, and the last phase when he went to abroad for his further education. Hope the summary is very clear to you, and after going through this explanation, go through the question, and I'm sure that you would be able to answer all the questions. Okay, thank you everybody. Thank you very much.